Hey everybody, welcome back to Windy City Live. Well, Sunday nights has become appointment television on ESPN with The Last Dance covering Michael Jordan and the Bulls dynasty. We are joined now by the docu-series director, Jason Hehir. And Jason, there was so much anticipation leading up to this series, and it is living up to the hype. It's got to feel good on that end.
Feels great. We're still working on it now, so it's a bit bizarre because there's no time to rest on our laurels and clink champagne glasses. Although we do that for a couple of hours every Sunday night, we're still working on episodes 9 and 10 as we speak. But the response has been fantastic. So I'm really proud of our team for doing what we could to get this thing out there when we did.
Right. Originally, it was going to be released in June, and because of everything we're going through, it was rushed. And even guys like LeBron were tweeting out, "Hey, release the documentary." So you guys are probably working around the clock.
Yeah, it's calmed down a little bit now since we just finished our final edit of episode 10 on Friday. So the finishing process is a little less intense than the actual edit process because really the creative aspect is kind of done, and certainly the input from all the partners, of which there are dozens on this project, from the Jordan brand to the NBA to Netflix and ESPN, that input is done. So now it's just a matter of our team color correcting and sound designing and closed captioning and translating. So it has calmed down quite a bit, but we're all exhausted and we're thrilled that we got it out there when we did.
Yeah, you got unbelievable access to Michael Jordan. We know he's a very private guy. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. You spent, maybe 8 hours with him on 3 different occasions, something like that. How did you get him to, A, agree to this, and B, have the freedom to ask whatever you wanted?
Well, he had agreed before they sought out directors. Back when they first embedded cameras in 1997 and 98 during that season, Adam Silver, who was then the president of NBA Entertainment, he's now the commissioner, said to Michael when he pitched this idea to him that it would never see the light of day without his permission and his participation. And at the worst case scenario is that you'll have the best home videos of all time. So for whatever reason, you'd have to ask Michael, 2016 is when he decided, okay, let's let this stuff see the light of day and let's start to tell this story. And then there was a 2-year process where they had to get the right partners and get to the table and figure out all the finances and logistics and the creative and everyone be on board with those parameters. So it certainly took a while. As far as Michael's openness and his willingness in this project, that was evident from the get-go. His team of people, SD Portnoy is his manager and Curtis Polk is his business partner, and they're probably the 2 closest people in his camp to Michael, had the foresight to put me in front of him a few times before we ever rolled cameras. So he knew what my vision for the project was, and I think he felt safe and confident that I was not going to, this was not an expose. We're gonna tackle some hard issues, and it was gonna be comprehensive, but it wasn't gonna be salacious or gratuitous. So I think he felt like he was in a safe space. And he also, he reminded me on several occasions, he reserved the right to nix anything that he didn't want to be in this documentary. But I'm very happy to say he never exercised that right. And there's a lot of stuff in here that's not that flattering. So it's a credit to him that he let all of this come out as raw and as honest as it could be.
Yeah. How much pressure do you feel as a director? And you've done some great sports documentaries, but it's a huge responsibility to tell this story and hope people like it and enjoy it and maybe learn something. It's got to be a lot on your shoulders.
It's a privilege, honestly. There's pressure with any project, and this was certainly a lot of work. And 2 years sounds like a long time until you consider that it normally takes about a year to do an hour-long documentary, archival doc like this, and we were doing 10 in 2 years. So the pressure was the time constraints and the schedule put on us. But as far as the responsibility, that was a privilege and frankly a dream for a kid who grew up watching Michael play from the time that he was a rookie. Is when I started to follow basketball. I was 7 or 8 years old when he came into the league. So to help people to revisit that time and maybe show them something that they don't remember, it's been a thrill. And then to bring it to a new generation of fans who only know him as a YouTube clip or a logo on a shoe has been a thrill as well, to educate people and to show them why Michael is considered as great as he's considered now. So it was a tremendous honor for myself and the entire team.
Is it true that when you were in 5th grade, you showed your class the 1987 dunk contest?
That is true. That is very true. I was I was in the throes of my Michael obsession then, and they gave us, it was a timed math test, and I won the quickest time and the most accurate test or whatever. And you had a choice. You could have class outside at the end of the week, or we could have an extra gym period at the end of the week. And I would always go for the gym class because all I wanted to do was be in the gym and playing basketball, whatever we could play. But I also wanted to show everybody this dunk contest that had just happened a few weeks prior. And so I asked the teacher if I could do it in option C, and he let me bring in the tape, and I presented this to the class, and we all sat there with our snacks at the end of the week and put the lights down, and we watched Michael take off from the foul line in the '87 dunk contest.
Did you tell Michael this story?
I don't think I did. It was a delicate dance because I needed Michael to know that I was educated. I had done my homework, but I didn't want to come across as a fanboy. So if I come in, I'm sure that a lot of people approach him. It's almost impossible not to approach him that way. As I told him one of the first times we met, that it must feel so bizarre that people are either in awe of you when they meet you, or they're pretending not to be. Anyone outside of his circle, there were 6 different waiters came up to our table within 20 minutes. At the hotel where I first met him in this lounge, and it was clear that there's a buzz in the room, and he just handles it with such grace. I didn't want to come right out of the gate and tell him that my wall was papered wall to wall with Michael Jordan posters, but I think he knew. He knows the age group that I'm from. He clearly knew that I was a huge sports fan, but it was kind of an unspoken understanding between us.
Right. I used to be a sportscaster. I've interviewed Michael, and he's still one of those guys. It doesn't matter how many times you see him in person, you're still like, wow, that is the guy. So how has your perception changed now that you've spent a lot of time with him? You got to ask him a lot of questions. Sometimes when we meet our heroes, it can be disappointing, or you just get a different vision of who that person is. So who is Michael Jordan to you now?
I see him more for the underdog that he was. I think that one of the most surprising aspects of this story to me was that coming into it, we just considered that Michael and the Bulls in the 90s dominated, and that it must have gotten easy after a while. It was death taxes and the Bulls in the finals. It was just a given. But from the ground level, when you see what these guys went through and the amount of hardship they went through, not just during those title runs, but in their youth. Michael came this close to quitting basketball after he didn't make his varsity team. And it would have been very easy for his mom to call and complain to the school, or tell him, screw that coach, go play soccer or play football or play something else. She didn't. She told him, she cried with him, and she told him, practice harder, get better. And it's such a refreshing notion. It's old school, but it just shows you that hard work and perseverance and dedication like that does pay off. Michael wasn't the best athlete in the NBA. He wasn't the best athlete in his team. He might not have been in the top 2. I think that Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman were probably better athletes than Michael Jordan was. But when you look at his story and consider it from the perspective that he was an underdog, that he did come in as he wasn't ranked in the top 600 recruits the summer before his senior season at Laney High School. He was unheard of, literally. Not on the radar. Mike Jordan from Wilmington, no one knew who that was. He was not listed as one of the top 20 recruits in North Carolina when he was in high school. So it's a really valuable lesson for kids and adults alike, that you just don't listen to all the noise out there. You keep your head down and you work, and good things will happen if you're dedicated enough. So that was, I see him as an underdog who worked his ass off really to get where he is, and nothing came easy. It's a cool perspective to have once you get to know his life story.
Yeah, the ultimate competitor. We certainly see that in The Last Dance. Is it true that he was worried about his reputation, and that's why this video has been sitting in a vault or wherever it's been for 22 years? He wasn't sure how the public would perceive him?
I don't know that that's the reason why it sat in the vault. I do know that from our first conversation, when I asked him, why do you want to do this? And he said, I don't. And I asked him why he didn't. And I think he was reluctant because a lot of this footage, as the series goes on, you'll see is very raw, and the way that he behaves around his teammates, he accepts nothing less than the best from himself, and nothing less than the best and the best effort from those around him. And when he doesn't get that, he's a killer. I mean, he can be a guy, he does not accept any level of mediocrity in terms of effort. I think that when he went away to play baseball, it was enlightening to him that you can try your best and still not be able to hit a curveball. But there's a lot of guys on his team who couldn't hit the equivalent of a curveball in basketball. So he started to appreciate effort more than performance when he came back. But, that footage is from 97, 98. So that's years after he came back. And if he senses that you are not giving your best or not playing through pain or not being tough enough, he's going to ride you. And to his credit, a lot of that stuff, like I said, is really raw. I was watching episode 7 the other day when we signed off on it, and I still can't believe that he allowed us to show some of the stuff that we're going to show. But to his credit, he wanted the unvarnished truth to be out there. So that's what people are going to see.
Right. As the director, are you sitting down with all 100 plus people that are featured in the documentary? And did you have to look through all 10,000 hours of raw footage?
I don't think that I've lived for 10,000 hours. I haven't done the math, but that's a lot of hours. So no, I of course I did not sit there. I didn't even look through the 500 hours of NBA footage that we have. I looked through the bulk of it, but it's just impossible to do that and to spin 5 or 6 plates with 5 or 6 different edit rooms and all of that. And we interviewed 106 people. Jake Rogal is our senior producer, and he was doing the job of 3 producers because he was overseeing the edit with our main editor. He was my kind of creative consigliere. Anytime I had any kind of inkling about what I wanted to do with story, I ran it through Jake. And then he also was the booker for all of these interviews, booking locations and interviews, which is more than a full-time job. It's not easy to book some of the people. This is not just like Googling their name and texting them and saying, hey, we'll be there on Monday. This was a years-long process. So he conducted, I would say, about a dozen of those interviews. For instance, he's the one who went down and got Scotty's backstory in Hamburg and interviewed Billy Pippen and some of his high school teammates and friends from his youth. Whenever I could, I would do the interviews myself, but sometimes there just weren't enough hours in the day, and Jake was more than capable of stepping in. So we tag team those, and the rest of it, we have just come up for air. Jake and I just had the best sleep that we've had in about 28 months when we finished that edit on Friday. Sunday morning, he texted me that he felt like he just got home from a war because he had slept harder in those past 12 hours than he had slept in 2.5 years. So it's been quite an experience, but I think neither one of us would change a thing.
Yeah, you interview everybody from complete legends, teammates, to 2 former presidents. And I don't know if you've seen on the internet, if you've had time, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes about the title for former President Barack Obama. It just says former Chicago resident.
Yeah, that was obviously a little bit of a joke, tongue-in-cheek. That was a joke, inside joke with us, and we knew that people would notice that. It never occurred to me that people would think it was out of disrespect. Barack Obama is one of my heroes. But he, in the context of that episode and the series at that point, the reason why we're talking to him is that he was a former Chicago resident. We're not saying that he's the 44th president of the United States and he's telling us that Michael was a great rookie. Well, frankly, I don't care what a president's opinion is of Michael's basketball acumen, but I do care about someone who lived in Chicago at the time and was dead broke, but would not miss a game on television, even though he couldn't go to the arena. And what better person to give us that perspective than Barack Obama?
Now, before I let you go, Jason, I got to ask you this. On the Mount Rushmore, I think we're going to agree that Michael Jordan is number 1, and this is going to solidify that. Is LeBron 2 for you, and would you want to do a documentary on him?
It's tough to rank. I think even Michael would not put himself as number 1. There's no one more reticent to discuss that than Michael himself. LeBron's physical gifts, I think, supersede anyone who's ever played in the NBA. Just his passing, his rebounding, his all-around game. Now that doesn't take into account intangibles, and you can't measure that. So we could sit here and discuss that until we're blue in the face. But up on that Mount Rushmore for me are 2 figures from my youth, which are Magic and Larry. I'm from Boston, and I grew up not really understanding the playoff format. I just knew that I got to stay up late in June when it was hot out and watch Celtics-Lakers games with my dad because the Celtics were going to be playing against the Lakers, and that's just what happened every June. So those guys, from a sentimental standpoint, are on my Mount Rushmore. And then you're talking about, Bill Russell has 11 rings. Jerry West is literally the logo for the league. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a lot of people argue to this day, is more dominant and better than all those guys. And I'm sure that Shaq and Kobe would have something to say about who belongs on that Mount Rushmore too. So it's a mountain range of people who have made up the landscape of the NBA, and it's just such a privilege to be able to tell one of those stories.
Yeah, well, Jason, it's been fun to watch. We're going to keep watching as The Last Dance airs every Sunday night, 8 o'clock on ESPN.